9 of our program of events. Nigerian Surveyors Lagos chapter answer. Our page 9. Lagos Quantity Surveyors, a branch of NIQS, helping in our nation building and construction was experts, professional, higher repute, outward integrity. Lagos chapter, flagship chapter, NIQS Space Center. Verse 2. National economic growth, objective of the QS, by the help of Almighty God, our nation shall upward soar. Cause engineers, that's who we are. Construction, legal experts. Lagos chapter, flagship chapter, our proven record is there. Lagos chapter, flagship chapter, long live the NIQS. Lagos chapter, flagship chapter, long live nation Nigeria. A round of applause, everybody. Please have a seat. Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, QS Obafemi Anoshile, ably represented by the Vice President of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, QS Olayemi Shonubi, member of the National Executive Council and Chairperson of Women Association of Quantity Surveyors, QS Adiroke Oyelami, past President of the Institute, QS Olusegun Ajani Koko, and also President Commonwealth Association of Quantity Surveyors and Land Economics, President Quantity Surveyors Registration Board of Nigeria, our Royal Fathers, His Royal Highness Obariwon Oshuolale Akiolu, ably represented by His Royal Highness Nuruddin Agoro Ojon of Lagos, Egbe of Lagos.
A round of applause, please. Let's welcome them.
And His Royal Highness Waheed Ayeni Shashore of Lagos chapter. Our keynote speaker, Mr. Ajibola Ojomola, partner KPMG. We have our discussant also here, engineer, pardon my French here, Okaisako Iguan. Members, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to say good morning and welcome you to the 11th annual distinguished lecture of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors Lagos chapter, whose theme is challenges of social infrastructure development, particularly the effects of Executive Order 007/2019 on road infrastructure over key infrastructures. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. My name is QS Bolani Shotunde, and it's a pleasure to be directing the affairs today. And of course, I won't be doing that alone. I'll be doing that with the elegant and, as usual, the most beautiful of all. I'm talking about QS Shokoya. Good morning, brother.
And I hope that we're going to be enlightened today with the you came for these distinguished lectures. You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam. Very quickly, I would like to do a safety briefing. Gentlemen, as it were, today, I'm sure QSID will have something to say concerning that later, because I would have that already. We'd like to bring up the gentlemen up here this morning, and I'd like to start with perhaps our keynote speaker this morning, Mr. Ajibola Olomola. Mr. Ajibola Olomola is partner and head of the Deal Advisory, M&A Tax and Financial Services Unit of KPMG in Nigeria. In his time with KPMG, Ajibola has served as leader engagement partner on numerous transactions advisory engagements, including financial model review, tax and regulatory advisory, merger and execution tax advisory, M&A due diligence, tax planning and management. Ajibola obtained a Bachelor of Laws from Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, and graduated from the Nigerian Law School in 1989. He is a member of the International Bar Association and the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, United Kingdom. He is also a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, and the Center for International Legal Studies, Austria. Prior to his time with KPMG, Ajibola served as Senior Legal Counsel at Chief Rotimi Williams Chambers, where he handled lawsuits on diverse issues, including constitutional laws, contracts, torts, etc. Ajibola's experience as lawyer, accountant, and tax and business consultant has enabled him consistently deliver value to clients across various markets within Nigeria, Africa, and globally. He has garnered over 30 years' experience advising several local and multinational organizations on various assignments such as framework, development and review, tax and regulatory compliance and advisory, implementation of cross-border schemes, corporate mergers and acquisitions, startups, compliance checks and audits, reorganizations and recapitalization of business restructuring. Elon is here with a partner at KPMG, Mr. Ademola.
Pointing also to discussants is you to come on the stage. With a round of applause. QS Murtala has served the Federal Republic of Nigeria in several capacities, including that of the Minister of State for Power and Steel, 2001 to 2012. He was a member Governing Council, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa Bauchi, 1999 to 2001. Member Governing Council, Adekunle Ajasin University, Akungbe Afoko, 2003 to 2007. And a member of the Governing Council, Ondo State University of Science and Technology, Okitipupa, 2007 to 2009. And also served as the Vice President of Quantity Surveyor Registration Board of Nigeria, 2 years from 2011 to 2013. A graduate of Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. He holds an MBA from the same institution. He was an alumni of Federal Government College, Odogwu. A round of applause. A founding partner and current chairman of Associated Cost Consultant, and also a founding director of Afro Project Consortium. He has been hands-on experience in the handling of several projects, including quantity surveyor in charge of the World Bank Educational Project in Katsina State, 1982 to 1983, and the ADB Finance Bauchi, Sokoto, KB, Zamfara, Kaduna, and Kwara State Health Projects, 1989 to 1995. Nigerian Ports Authority Headquarters, Abuja, among other and all aspects of project intervention, feasibility, planning, and processes for project implementation for the Petroleum Special Trust Fund, 1996 to 1999. A round of applause, please. He also established and organized the Works Department of the Federal University of Technology, Mina, as the pioneer professional staff, 1994 to 1986. He has participated in the DFID supported SLGP, SPARC, and PAC for the MDG's conditional grant programs. A fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, chartered member, Nigerian Institute of Management, member, Nigerian Institute of Directors, UK, is currently an executive consultant, business development with Afri Projects Consortium, and chairs the board of Woodcraft Limited, Kaduna. Aliyu was the president of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors between 2013 to 2015, the president of the QRSBN from June 2017 to date. Aliyu was born in Gombe State on the 11th of April 1960 and is married with children. He is Mutwali Gombe, a member of the Gombe Emirate Council. A round of applause. You're welcome.
Of stage this time around, our other discussant for today, person of engineer Okaisagbo Iguan. At the time, I'd like to welcome off stage our other discussant for today. Is the gentleman. Permit me at this stage with a standing ovation to please welcome on stage the president of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, who is ably represented here by QS Olaye Shotomi. Please be standing. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And while still standing and also keep clapping, I also wanted to welcome one of our icons in the industry in quantity surveying, not only Nigeria, Africa, and the Commonwealth as a whole. I'm talking about the past president of NIQS and also the president of the Commonwealth Association of Surveyors and Land Economics, QS Olusegun Ajanle Koko. Please clap. Please a round of applause for this gentleman. Really. And of course, I think a round of applause for the state, for the host chapter, NIQS Lagos, for bringing together men in our local dialect of timber and caliber. Please a round of applause for that. Today is surely going to be one of the best, perhaps one of the most enlightened. Once again, we say good morning. And it's really a pleasure, and we give our show the importance of quantity surveying profession as a whole. Thank you, which is the chairman of Nigerian Quantity Surveyors Lagos State Chapter, for his opening remarks. Please join me as a welcome QS Aliba Akere.
Without mentioning infrastructure, and infrastructure is vital to the health of any economy. But funding leaves a gap, and associated corrupt practices institutes a hindrance to any development, which government continually strives to fill using various options. This year, we shall be taking a look at the federal government's executive order 007 of 2019 with a view to discuss extensively the social advantages of tax credit option as a catalyst for infrastructure funding. In the light of this, we have in our midst capable resource persons who will enlighten us more on the purpose and usefulness of this executive order. Furthermore, we shall learn about the road infrastructure tax credits, issuance of certificates, utilization of the tax credits, the participants, the beneficiaries, the eligible rules, and how to determine the project cost. I will not want to assume the role of the keynote speaker nor the discussants. I will therefore allow us to listen carefully so that they can give justice to the topic. Let us listen to them with proper attention. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, I know we're trying to get deep into today's activity, and we've been advised once again to call on everybody to please people leave the substructure and go and sleep on the roof. Are they being conflicts again? I don't know. of QS Donatus Elnechukwu. It's from our Abuja chapter. You know, Lagos is a flagship, but you know, Abuja will always want to follow Lagos. QS Onware George, the treasurer, NIQS Abuja. You're welcome, sir. Oh, sorry, help me welcoming the past chairman of NIQS Lagos chapter and also the past secretary marketing. You're welcome, sir. Okay, shortly, just as I went back there, you know, they were asking me about just Marshall and step on. It's all about infrastructural development, how to do tax, and cabinet is fully in tune with that. But please, let's respect the Opasha that is here. Let's respect His Royal Majesty and also everybody that is here. Be respectful. Attentive, no noise making, please. We're represented by the Vice President, QS Olaye Shonubi, is the Chief Host and Chairman of this occasion for his opening remarks. The
Order of Lagos, Oshogani Ruwan Akulu, ably represented by his chiefs. The past President of the Nigerian Surveyors and current President of Commonwealth Association of Surveying and Land Economy, Kiwechemu Adanekugu. The past President of the Nigerian Surveyors and the current President of the Surveyors Registration Board of Nigeria, Mutwale Gobe, Malam Mochala Aliu, distinguished keynote speaker, I don't know whether to call him a barrister or an accountant, because the man of so many parts, Ajibola Olomola, a fellow alumnus of the OAU, engineer Okesebo Ugan of the construction Keza, fellows of, past chairman of Lagos Chapter are present. Fellows of the Nigerian Surveyors here present, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to be here in front of each and every one of you. I bring glad tidings on behalf of the President, Mr. Abafemi Oluwole, who unfortunately cannot be here due to some exigencies. And I bring his warm wishes for this gathering, and in particular to commend the service of the Nigerian Surveyors Lagos chapter for sustaining this program, which, like you saw from the banner, is the 11th in the series, the Distinguished Lecturers series of the Nigerian Surveyors Lagos chapter. Please, can we give the service of the Lagos chapter a round of applause? When you say this is the 11th in the series, that means this is the 11th year running without break that this program has run. So for successive members of the Senate of Lagos chapter, they've kept this flag flying, and we must commend them, because what is the distinguished lectures all about? The idea is to bring up a topical issue that affects not only our industry, but the role that our industry can play within the larger sector of the Nigerian economy. And then, of course, you look at the theme for today, the infrastructure, the challenges of social infrastructural development, the effect of the Executive Order 007, 2019. We all know that infrastructure is key to economic development. And in the recent years, it's been found that even though this present policies is spending 30% or being allocated 30% of yearly budgets to capital expenditure. But when you also examine that capital expenditure, you find items such as purchase of motor vehicles, office equipment, and so on as part of the capital expenditure. So you really find out how much you actually spent on the infrastructure, that is building of roads, schools, hospitals, and so on. We might find out that what's the spent might be less than 15%. In all of this, you also recall the debate that went on about 2 years ago when the National Assembly decided to bear some of the amount allocated to Lagos Expressway towards constituency projects. And what were those constituency projects? Empowerment of their constituents, buying sewing machines, giving them things like gari, beans, and rice, as compared to having a motorway road. Anybody that had to spend like 5 hours on Lagos Expressway, whether you're going to the east or you're going to the north, will attend to the fact that that road is critical, is germane to the economic development of this country. We will also know the kind of pains importers face. When you talk about importers, you also talk about manufacturers moving their products or their goods, their raw materials from the ports because of the bad Apapa roads. All these are challenges that government needs to find an ingenious way to fund these projects. One, of course, is the so-called point that government took, which is supposed to go strictly and tied to particular projects. And I want to believe that this executive order, which is about tax credits, is also a scheme about funding critical infrastructure, which road is one of it. Because you need roads to move things. But I will not go further into the details. I'm sure Mr. Ajibola Awomola here will give us details of what this is all about. I will implore each and every one of us to listen attentively. Our keynote speakers too will be talking from different dimensions. We have Bala Mutala, who will probably be talking from the perspective of the QS and will give his own exposition as to the benefit to us and why we should have been consulted when this was being put together. And of course, the engineer will also be talking from the perspective of they will be participants, because as a construction company, by the time government decides to allocate or give tax credit to the big company, his company will be one of those that will be engaged to build those roads. So he will probably be talking from his own perspective. So I will enjoy each and every one of us to listen attentively, take notes as I've been advised, and then we're ready to fire questions when we finish. Once again, on behalf of the President, Mr. Abba, I welcome each and every one to this program.
While our own QS Ruby was speaking, Kemi QS Bemibo Ogunfidodo is the Chief Examiner, also recognizing QS Benga Oluwa. We're calling on the keynote speaker, Mr. Ajibola Olomola, to take us through his presentation.
Framework to allow the private sector, particularly private sector capital and private sector efficiency, to come to play in a very significant aspect of our national economy. As we all know, infrastructure is central to sustainable development and the economic competitiveness of any nation. A country without infrastructure is like a body without a skeleton. Nigeria has made significant progress in the deployment of key infrastructure over the years. However, there has been a consistent gap due to advancements in technology that creates an urgent need for sustained geometric infrastructure growth if Nigeria is to achieve its developmental goals and economic objectives. Presently, the greatest drag on Nigeria's economic growth is the country's substantial deficit in basic physical infrastructure, which also severely compromises our human development. The World Economic Forum's 2017-18 Global Competitiveness Index ranks Nigeria's infrastructure at a lowly 132 out of 137 countries surveyed. So we're pretty much at the bottom rung. And you know, they say when you're at the bottom, the only place you can go is up. But I think the Nigerian story is that sometimes we contrive reasons to keep digging rather than going up. Hopefully this executive order is a step that helps pull us up. The country also acknowledged this deficit in the 2017 ERGP, which is the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan that was initiated by the administration of President Buhari. And it noted that deplorable infrastructure is one of the main factors that have seriously undermined our economic performance in the past. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, also known as the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, dedicates several goals to infrastructure development, thereby recognizing its crisscrossing nature and its fundamental importance for human progress. Specifically, Goal 9 focuses on building resilient infrastructure, while Goal 22 focuses on promoting sustainable industrialization and fostering innovation. This paper discusses all this and focuses on road infrastructure being a critical enabler for economic development and development. One of the obvious benefits of road infrastructure is connectivity. Roads bring us together as a nation. The increasing level of economic activities in various parts of Nigeria creates a requirement for greater accessibility to more markets, easy mobility of persons, consumer goods, and agricultural produce across these regions. It was announced on TV yesterday night that the country will be signing the Africa Continental Trade Agreement at last. As most of us probably know, there are three pillars to the ACFA. The first is movement of goods, movement of persons, and also movement of services. That's less than 50% memory. Of the paved roads, a large percentage is in very poor, unacceptable state due to insufficient investment and lack of adequate maintenance. It's estimated that 40% of the federal primary road network is in poor condition or worse, and therefore in need of rehabilitation. 30% is in fair condition and in need of periodic maintenance, and about 27% is in good condition. The need for urgent road infrastructure investment in Nigeria has never been greater. One of the key contributors of the road infrastructure gap as it exists today in Nigeria is the pressure it places on the government in closing it out. And the government has got to balance this need with so many other needs competing for scarce financial resources. And it is probably fair to say that the government does not have enough money to finance every single project that the country needs to have financed. We know the story of various ministries. And we find that despite the annual budgetary allocations for road construction in the country, a large percentage of our roads remain in poor condition. Total planned capital expenditure for the year to the construction and rehabilitation of about 20 roads nationwide. The impact of all this work. And the government recognizes it can't do it alone. To carry out various forms of public-private partnerships, PPP as we call it in the consulting world, operate toll models, and Lagos-Ekpe Expressway is a very good example of that, even though that was done by the Lagos State government, which allows investors to construct roads in economically viable areas with a view to generating income and receiving their cash back. This model of public finance, in which government leverages private financing, has gained mixed results and public feedback. Those of us who were involved in the Lagos State project, for example, on Lekki Expressway, are familiar with the agitation of the host communities from the perspective of the private technical paper after this session, so you can all read it at your own time. So, following the same spirit of skipping to places I think you might be interested in, you then ask the question, how do I know that these roads will be done to the right quality level? as stipulated by the Highway Code, because we do have a federal highway code in Nigeria that stipulates the standards to which roads should be done. Well, the comfort here, nothing changes in the quality assurance protocols. So you still have the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, and I regret that His Excellency, the former minister, is not here. He played a very key role in shaping this executive order. That's the former minister, Raji Fashola. He would have spoken about their own view as to how they were going to keep the roads at the right level of quality. So, Federal Ministry of Works and Housing will still stipulate the standards to which roads have to be built. Quantity surveyors and engineers of the various construction companies will still do what you are familiar with doing, which is to raise your bill of quantities and submit that to the Ministry of Works and Housing for verification. The BPP still has a role in checking the proposed costs for the roads that are being constructed. So the entire life cycle for road construction and awards that you are already familiar with will continue to apply. So in other words, today, if you want to do a road, you need to go through a hop, step and jump protocol from BPP, Ministry of Works and Housing, there's also ICRC that's involved, before it's then recommended to the Federal Executive Council for approval. It goes to FEC twice before it's finally approved. Because you do have a role. Because the professionals have to cost the road. You have to tell us. You have to tell us whether roads are viable or not viable. I think this scheme presents numerous opportunities for various stakeholders, and not just QSs, to make a footprint and contribute their quota to the development of our great nation, and I'll be closing with these thoughts. The interaction between the private sector participation in what should ordinarily be a government function is delicate but interesting and requires consistent discourse. Quantity surveyors and other professionals in the construction industry have requisite know-how and experience, understand the Nigerian construction landscape, and they understand the cost implications and design implementation constraints. They are also very embedded in the current government contracting and construction process. In addition to your knowledge of government standards and protocols, QSs also understand the requirements of private sector financiers. Banks do not understand road construction. How does the bank determine that there's a viable business case to finance the construction of a particular road? The first document they will look at is your bill of quantities. If your bill of quantities does not show them that they can deploy capital to this project and complete it, because you've got to complete for you to get your tax credit. If you cannot demonstrate that business case or banking case, as we call it, nobody's going to deploy capital. So you are the first line of defense. You understand what financiers want to see. You understand the concept of value for money and efficient asset delivery. And so you play an instrumental role in the contracting process under the scheme. You also understand timelines. So if a road construction would take, if it should be done during the rainy season, if it should be done during the dry season, if it should take 3 months, if it takes X number of time for something to dry up properly, all those technical jargon, that's the area where you play a pivotal role in keeping all the professionals working at the appropriate standards. I have not discussed in this morning session the various other stakeholders that are involved in getting approvals under EO7. Neither have I discussed in detail the process you need to go through. All these are contained in my paper, and I hope that when you get it from the Institute, you will see those details. If you have questions, my details are also included in the paper. Shoot me an email, call me up on my phone number. I'm ready to talk about this. If you have clients that you think might be optimized by getting involved in this scheme, contact KPMG contact the Federal Ministry of Finance, where the Secretariat for the Roads Committee, the Implementation Committee, we only had 2 roads. We only had 2 roads on the list. When the President invited the governors and at the FEC and told them about this scheme and invited them to get involved in the scheme, between that time and when the President signed the scheme, 17 other roads have been added. State roads. Because another question is, will states participate? States are already participating. If you look at the list, and in my paper, I've listed all of them, all those roads. States are getting involved. Your clients can get involved. The President has said that he would like to see more people step up and volunteer. Let's get this thing done, and let's build a modern Nigeria that we can all be proud of. Thank you very much.
I'm sure I'm going to start shooting you from here. So I hope you're set. All right? There are a lot of things you brought up, and I trust the President under his coordination to lead the discussion that's going to go around very soon. Mr. President, if you oblige, our royal fathers are begging to be excused. So we'd like the stage to have a picture with them before they exit. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. A round of applause. Well, thank you very much for gracing us with your presence, sir.
The past president of the institute and current president of Commonwealth Association of Surveying and Economy for his own remarks on the paper. QS.
By everyone, and have my own takeaway from it. But here am I, and I'm very happy that I can see so many faces. I'm bringing a paper by Olomola, who I've met before. He made a presentation to us, very brilliant. KPMG is very good. They are brilliant professionals all the time. Akulele takes my abroad too, so they don't take anything less than first class. So you can see the stuff that they are made of. Well done, very brilliant paper. My comment is going to go against the grain of what you have discussed. And it's my worry about Nigeria. I have been privileged to travel far and wide, and I've seen how things are done. And it's always very disappointing to come back and see things the way they are, not the way they are, going down all the time. And you go back to other countries, you see how they are moving up all the time. And I'll give a simple example. You talk of the roads, Badagry Lagos Road, and had the opportunity to travel on that road, the Badagry Lagos. Terrible, shamble. Then crossover, Badagry Benin Road. Beautiful, well laid out, well structured road. No potholes. They don't have money. We financed it and we built it for them. And yet, the quality of that road, you can't compare it to what we have. So there's a fundamental problem with Nigeria somewhere, which has to be solved. So if really this has to work, it requires far more fundamental shifts. I would think a tax restructuring would be the approach for me. We have developed a sophisticated tax regime which cannot work in Nigeria. It's making some people rich. It cannot work because we have not developed to that level where the sophistication of the current tax regime can work.
Murtala Aliyu, the President of Surveyors, to make his own presentation. Thank you and welcome.
So, even though he didn't go through the whole paper like he wrote it, there are quite a number of things that we ought to, for instance, the governance structure that he didn't have time to present and so on, that we intended to skip, but maybe we have to bring them now because they are part of the challenges. But one observation I had about the topic itself, or the executive order itself, is that almost all the comments are documented either by lawyers or financial experts or accountants. I have not come across any comments by construction industry experts so far. Maybe there are, but I have not come across any. And I think that there is not much engagement, stakeholder engagement by government itself, as far as the issue of the executive order is concerned. Until the Lagos chapter called me and said, look, I'm going to be part of the discussions, I only knew about it nominally. So for me to be discussing, I had to go and find out information about the executive order. And I think that there is need for higher stakeholder engagement to ensure that we all buy into the scheme. Now, the keynote speaker gave a background. Locally here, there is the 2012 infrastructure relief scheme, which just lasted 5 years. And it was based on that the 2017 Road Trust Fund also came up, which gave birth, or rather which was refined after some engagement to what we have today as the road infrastructure development scheme. Now, this is not something new which had happened in other countries. The United Nations and ECOSOC had met in Senegal to discuss the infrastructure gap in Africa. One is the roads and transport infrastructure generally, telecom infrastructure, and energy. These are the three that were discussed. And also the SDG and Africa's agenda for 2063 also took all that into consideration, the issue of infrastructure in Africa. So it's something that actually had started, not just localized in Nigeria, but generally the infrastructure in Africa needed attention for Africa to be able to anchor into the world, or rather global trade anchorage. There are also a number of initiatives like the Accelerated Industrial Development for Africa, the Trans-African Highways, and so on. They are all part of Africa's growth agenda that are supposed to anchor into the SDG 2030. The US also had a similar scheme. They had the Investment Tax Credit Scheme, which was covering beyond the road infrastructure. It's also covering things like low-income housing, like new markets, business investment, and so on. Now, all these are part of the concepts that actually will support this scheme and will make it a sensible, viable program. Well, he has discussed with us the intent of the program, what we intend to achieve, and I don't know, he also spoke about the mandate in his paper. What gives the President of Nigeria the mandate to sign the order, which is the Constitution, which empowers him to sign or rather execute any law by the National Assembly, and also the issue of the company income tax, which is Section 23 of the Company Income Tax, which gives also the President the mandate to deploy resources from tax to infrastructure. So these were the aspects that gave the President the mandate to sign the order. Now, the governance structure which he didn't pick. The Minister of Finance is supposed to be the chair that will manage the whole program. and is supposed to be deputized by the minister in charge of works. The current arrangement is the Minister of Power, Works and Housing. It may change, but whichever minister is in charge of works will there is overlaps. And the structure is also being represented under this deputy chair by the Federal Ministry of Finance, the Federal Ministry of Power, Works and Housing, the Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment, and the Federal Ministry of Justice. There are other stakeholders also, like the Bureau for Procurement, Public Procurement, Federal Inland Revenue, Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission, Security and Exchange Commission, Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission, the Budget Office of the Federation, National Bureau of Statistics, National Sovereign Investment Authority, and there is going to be a representative from the Office of the President, and also any other person the Federal Minister of Finance finds fit to be in the committee. Now, all the people that will represent the other bodies will be at least at the level of director and above. So we have a big structure that will run this program, which will provide a one-stop shop for anybody coming to get into the scheme. You don't have to run to the various locations. Now that will be part of the challenge I'm going to discuss briefly. Now, who are the actors? The major actors are tax experts or financial experts, because the participants will have to come up with an SPV if they are not coming directly, and it has to be through a financial manager who will now coordinate this and now for their proposal to be able to enjoy the credit scheme. The Federal Revenue is an actor. The lawyers, of course, and other ADR experts, because they are going to be some ADR issues that come, and then the construction experts. Now, the construction experts are the law in the ladder, not because they are this important, but actually it's a financial issue. So we are down there below the financial experts, the tax experts, the legal experts, and so on. The procurement also, there are challenges. Again, I will not go into details, but you see the stages are the pre-approval stages, where the design and the costing have to be agreed to before the project itself is admitted into the scheme. And then now you go into the construction stage. Now, the cost overrun, as I mentioned, in Nigeria can go as high as 47%. How will I plan as a participant in that project? Not only for committing our money now, but also for planning for the 47% cost overrun that will come in. Or, if the gap is so much and the project cannot get completed, it means I'm losing the benefits. That's a challenge. Then, the issue of integration of that project to the main network. You see, we have the National Integrated Infrastructure Master Plan, which laid out the whole thing with a nicely put document that requires to put about $300 billion in the next 30 years. And the arrangement is to put $5 billion annually for initial years, and so on. How do we integrate this to that? How do we, and I saw one of the candidate roads we gave, the Orishaki road, about 9 kilometers. How do you integrate that to the other bigger network of roads in the country? How do you, there's one that is around around Okene, if you fix that, the video part is bad. So how do you have the effects? How does it get integrated into the main thing? And then the management and use, which I mentioned for the roads, management and use when you complete some use. The post-procurement issues also will pose a challenge. Who manages the facility post-construction? Government? Are you going to go into another PPP arrangement for managers? The post-procurement challenge, another one is the issue of budgetary provision for post-construction management. Now, when the road is already there, it's the property of government. The government will have to make further commitments in terms of budget for the maintenance of those roads. Even though in your explanation you said it will lead to more, it will lead to higher tax revenue, but it will also put a lot more tax, a lot of more pressure on the already budget, on the existing budget for the maintenance of the expanding infrastructure. Then there are other risks involved. The political risk. When I gave an example of when I brought the issue of that the president amend the order, has the power to amend the order. This order is supposed to last for 10 years. And suddenly there is a new government, and a new president comes and decides that he wants to redefine God's orders, and you already the scheme. Now that exposes you to a political risk. Of course, there are technical risks involved in all projects, like normal technical risks, which you all know here, which I will have to discuss. The foreign exchange risk and other financial risks will come in here because of the exposure to expatriates and equipment. Conflict resolution. I went through the order to find out if there is any mechanism for conflict resolution apart from the management committee. I think that in trying to develop further the order also, the aspects, when I mentioned of conflict resolution, should be taken into consideration. Both the local dimension, even though the order, everything under the order is governed by the laws of Nigeria, but there are some dimensions that will come in from the foreign side, and I think that rather foreign actors that we need to look at the ADR aspect of that. And then, now look, the credit certificate is tradable. I think I'm right. It's tradable, which means if I have all certificates and I want to cash on it, I can take it to it can be taken to SEC, another beneficiary will pick it, and add to the scheme. Now, knowing the financial experts now, this can now go into derivatives, and then activity will be more in the trade of the credit tax rather than putting money on the roads. Now, I don't know if that's taken into consideration, but something has to be done to also hedge the tax credit certificates from excessive trade. To be part of the interrogation of this order, so that we can now look at the experts and see how they can redefine it or refine it to ensure that we all benefit from it. Thank you very much.
We need to get private funding and private participation in infrastructure projects to be able to move forward as a country. Again, I talked about, for us as a construction company, we're excited that if this happens, there's more business. I think it's an opportunity for, why you talked about us having to bring in equipment. I also look at the existing equipment on ground. If you drive around and look at the yards of construction companies, it's full of equipment because there's no work. So those equipment will be brought into play. They will be used to create value. The idle staff, people who are being laid off, they will be reemployed. And they will come and use those equipment to work and to make money, and like we said, create employment, less crime, and everybody's happy. But then, as a construction business, I have my fears about the scheme. Since this, I don't see why a construction company cannot embark on this kind of projects. It shouldn't be only the manufacturers. A construction company can decide to be a developer, go to an industrial area, and do this development and get tax credit for it. But here are our constraints. One, we worry about the transparency of the scheme. Unfortunately, when we work with government, we're afraid. People are always afraid of dealing with government because we're not sure of how things will go. And then you talked about proof of concept. Of course, we always need proof of concept. We want to see one successful one before we now want to replicate at scale. And for finance to come in, a transaction has to be bankable. And for it to be bankable, it has to be predictable. So, Madam Ali, you talked about political risk. Yes, if we know that this thing can be upturned by the next administration, or for political reasons, because the guy is a political opponent, decide to hit him, then people are not going to put money down. And for a government that is famous for policy somersaults, then people are going to be afraid to put, it's a long-term investment. We're talking about 10 years or more, because infrastructure, we know, is expensive. So people are going to worry about investing their money in this kind of project. And this is one of the reasons why, of course, the power sector has not grown the way it should be until they started giving partial sovereign guarantees before people started putting money down in the power sector. So we're going to face the same challenges as we faced in the power sector. There's good capital around the world, but they're sniffing around for good projects. So if we don't have good projects for people to put money on, nobody's going to bring out money to do this thing. Now, I will talk about it from a taxation angle. As a construction company, we used to have 5% of our revenue withheld as taxes. During Okonjo-Iweala's time as coordinating minister for the economy, she reduced those taxes from 5% to 2.5% because we're struggling with cash flow. It's difficult. We don't make the kind of profits they imagine that we make. For 5% to be equivalent to the 30% taxation, a company must be making 16.67% in profits. That's after deduction of costs. And I can tell you that most construction companies don't make that amount. So when you hold 5% in advance for a construction company, the company is already struggling. Then you ask the same construction company to come and invest more in tax credits. I mean, how? How is that going to be possible? No construction company is going to do that because you have all your money in the hands of governments. And by the way, when FIRS has your money, then you lose your negotiation power. They dictate the terms because they have your money in their hands. They slap you with all sorts of taxes and you have no choice to accept because the money is already in their hands. So that's, and then it's also said that it's only 50% of the taxes that can be deployed per annum. So you need to pay the other 50%, either through your withholding tax receipts and all that. So it's like throwing all the money in the taxman's hands. And at the end of the day, I really wonder how the businesses can survive. For me, as a construction business, it just doesn't add up. There's no way we can do it successfully and survive it. Even though it's an opportunity to create business where there was none, create employment, use our equipment that could have been idle, it makes sense. But then, these are things that I think should be considered seriously. For the role of the QSs, as always, coming up to being innovative, proper costing, and also to look at the financing of this business, this project. I think QSs always have a role. And I thank the Lagos chapter again for inviting me.
I think the Lagos, from government perspective, Engineer Thomas, please.
Thank you, sir. Well, the presidential executive order 007, I haven't gone through the paper. I see it more like PPP arrangements. And having looked at it, I was able to articulate some points. But I think Mr. Olomola has done a lot of justice to most of the things I want to talk about. But I would rather want to share, the Lagos State experience with us. Because for me, the 07-2019 is not a novelty to Lagos State government. Lagos State government has been involved in PPP projects in the past, and there are examples all over the place. So I'll just take us through the experience of what we have been doing in Lagos State. Well, over the years, we came up with a public-private partnership arrangement, which is christened Public Infrastructure Improvement Partnership. We call it PIIP. The PIIP is a Lagos State government initiative for constructive engagement of socially responsible private sector organizations and eminent and high net worth philanthropic individuals who can engage government or partner with government in the execution of improvement schemes. Such schemes are construction, rehabilitation and maintenance of roads, construction of pedestrian bridges, clearing of drains, installation, rehabilitation and maintenance of street lighting, facilities and traffic signals, power supply to street lighting facility and traffic signals, landscape improvements, provision of drugs and health care facilities such as primary health care centers, provision of educational facilities in schools, and support for the care of elderly and the physically challenged and members of the society. Well, in this scheme, there are derivable benefits for the participants in this scheme. And among the derivable benefits are, we have when you get involved with the government, when you partner with the government to execute this scheme, you are given commendation plaques, you are given recognition commendation letter from His Excellency. Then you have the opportunity of being invited to the Lagos State Economic Summit. Then for those who are involved, you have the opportunity of being given the free advert billboard placement along the infrastructure corridor. And possibility of renaming the infrastructure after the donor or the investor is possible too. And then state recommendation for donors and investors for national awards and tax concession is often granted. Another benefit is enlistment of donors or investors on Lagos State Road Honors of Humanitarian Services and recognition of donors or investors as state functions. Well, having gone through the paper, I realized that there's still need for a lot of advocacy because it's something that is still very, among the big players. In order to bring in the big players, you need to do a lot of advocacy, you need to do a lot of enlightenment, because for them to come in, they need to know more about the program. Then, for the projects that have been implemented by Lagos State under PPI, we have a modus operandi for the implementation of that project. It's either the project is implemented wholly on a donor basis or on a cost-sharing basis. And we have examples of such projects that have been executed in the past. For instance, Ademola Adetukombo Road was done in partnership with Eco Hotels on a 50-50% basis. Ajose Adeogun was done with Zenith Bank. If you go through that place, it's a road that has been there for quite some time and is sustainable. It was done with the benefits directly for parking rights to the bank, as well as adverse placement for the banks. So,
yeah, it's been a worthwhile morning, and we are gradually moving towards the end of the program. Before we go into questions, there is this issue that like a brother for me, given the governance structure of the scheme. And I know that Malam Tolani, you actually raised it in his own presentation. And that has to do with the bureaucracy involved in getting approval. Top of the ladder that involves about 5 different entities, and the possibility of frustration by government officials who, for any reason whatsoever, that to reduce bureaucracy as much as possible. You have 2 government agencies already in that committee that are saddled with maybe checking issues like this. For instance, for the PPP arrangements, you have the ICRC, PPP. I was wondering whether there was no way we could have just taken one point or the other. It must stifle the interest of some will-be investors. I'm asking myself, you go to a Solo industrial estate, you go to a Ikeja industrial estate, the industries there, if they really want to do big businesses, if they want to move their products, if they want to move their raw materials, they could fall themselves into clusters like is provided in the scheme. Or to look at, is it possible to get some clusters to be interested? I heard of Unilever, and I thought that maybe Unilever is involved because of their Agbada factory. And for them to be able to move their products, unfortunately for Unilever also, the Agbada factory is also linked to the, I think, Sokoto Expressway. So easily, if they want to move products even to the Niger Republic, it's a lot easier. And so we might want to look at things like that. But then, like I said, how do we tackle the bureaucracy that will likely come up with this agreement?
I take the feedback that further stakeholder engagement is recommended, and indeed this is being done. I've been on TV speaking about this scheme. Other people have been on other news channels speaking about it. Thing is, when you talk about roads, when you talk about taxes, it probably doesn't gain as much currency to do the best we can. To speak directly to the question of bureaucracy, which both His Excellency and yourself have raised, let me also correct a misconception then. The whole objective of the committee is to break through bureaucracy. So it's not an additional layer of bureaucracy. In fact, the reason why the Honorable Ministers for Finance and Works are put at the helm of the implementation committee is to enable them drive the process. You may be familiar with Executive Order 001 on the ease of doing business, and the fact that when we apply to government agencies for approvals now, there's a fast-track process available to us all. If you don't get your application treated within a period of time, under Executive Order 001 by presidential order, your application can be deemed to have been approved. So the objective is that by having the committee supervise what those relevant MDGs are doing, the prospect of delays, the prospect of having to move envelopes from one table to the other can be significantly reduced. And in fact, with respect to the 3 projects that have already been approved by the implementation committee, I can say that there were no delays at all. The process worked like clockwork. So I would encourage us to see the committee not as a, well, I know the engineers have something about throughput and also about bottlenecks. The committee is not a bottleneck. The committee is meant to be an enabler. And by bringing everybody to the table, if ICRC were to say, and I don't pick on them, they are not necessarily a stumbling block, but if somebody from ICRC were to say, oh, I can't approve this because of ABC, the person that is defending the application is not just the applicant. ICRC will have to come and explain to the committee why it cannot be approved. So all of a sudden, government is shifting from being the bottleneck to being the enabler. So I know that if Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, for example, the engineer, raises a technical objection to a drawing, they can be asked to explain at a larger committee level, why are you objecting to this? Defend yourself. And then they defend themselves. Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? So the committee is supposed to be on the side of the business. And that's the way, hopefully, it will work. What's the need for the construction industry? We did consult with a lot of companies that operate in this value chain, obviously, to understand what the pain points were and what you would like to see in terms of a process that actually works. A lot of the technical inputs into this order were provided by engineers and by quantity surveyors. We sat down with them and we took their input, and their input was put into the scheme. We also engaged with construction companies, and they gave feedback directly to the ministers who were involved. You will also notice that part of the costs that can be recovered is the fee payable to the construction companies and also to the professionals that are involved, and that was deliberately put in there. So if a quantity surveyor is involved in designing and building up the cost specification of a particular road project, he should be paid his professional fees. And I know that there are standards, just like there are for estate agents, for lawyers, and so on and forth. You have standards that prescribe what quantity surveyors should be paid for what kind of work done. And because of the downward spiral of the economy, you find that there's a lot of pressure on whether clients can actually pay those fees. But by being able to pass those costs on, hopefully you will find that your clients are better able to pay your fees, because they will recover your fees from the government on whose behalf they are contracting. I would like us to view roads being done under this scheme. Say again. People have taken notes of what everyone has said, and so has my colleague, who is actually inputting it directly into our own system, and we will be giving feedback to the committee about all the comments raised and the initial feedback we have provided. If there's any other clarification that's provided by the committee, I will share them with the institute. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wayne. Do we have questions for him or for any of the discussants? Floor is now open. Yes.
In order to participate in the scheme would be the implementation committee. And the implementation committee is located in the Federal Ministry for Finance in Abuja. The permanent secretary of the Federal Ministry of Finance is the secretary of the implementation committee. So if the Institute for Quantity Surveyors, for example, were minded to write a letter to the implementation committee proposing to support their work, the permanent secretary would be the person to address the letter to, and we could then engage him in a discussion, because there was a comment made by Alhaji as to whether or not the committee could benefit from having QSs participate. There was also a question as to, now in no particular order, if you would please allow me to take the questions in any order. There was a question that Madam asked about whether QSs were involved. Now, I said at the beginning, I'm not a QS. It's not one of my many qualifications, unfortunately. So I can't profess to know what the QS has done or not done. But I have seen contracts that have been awarded by the federal government of Nigeria. I have also seen contracts that have been done under this framework. And every single contract has a bill of quantity that is stamped by a relevant professional. Now, I cannot tell you sitting here whether that professional is a QS or an engineer. Now, that may be a bit beyond me, because I wasn't thinking that there was that much of a distinction. Because I've always thought that it was a symbiotic relationship, that the engineers required and that they leverage the work of QSs in actually costing and in the work that they do. So engineers typically supervise, I believe, the project, but they then supervise the work of other professionals, including QSs. That had been my understanding. But with the benefit of your question, when I get back to the office, I'll check to see what seal was included on the bill of quantities, whether it's that of a QS or an engineer. I would imagine it would be a QS, but that's just my personal opinion. I think if there's a need for dialogue between the Institute and COREN, which is the council that regulates engineering, then maybe you need to have that dialogue. If there are gray areas between the work engineers do and the work that QSs do, there are laws that already stipulate what QSs should do in any event. That dialogue, I would recommend to you, might be the solution to that conundrum as to who does what. Just like I wouldn't expect a nurse to be the one undertaking an eye surgery. I would expect that to be done by a registered consultant or ophthalmologist. So there was also a question as to the impact from Mr. Shoson now, as to the impact on budget. If money that would otherwise have gone to the federation account and shared among the states are now being deducted at source in terms of tax credits. Indeed, the executive order mandates the Minister for Finance, working through the implementation committee, to determine the impact, the fiscal impact of tax credits being issued in any year on the national budget and the ability to finance the remainder of the national budget. Now, the Fiscal Responsibilities Act requires the minister, Section 29, I believe of that, requires the minister to submit every year an implementation plan that takes account of how interventions of this nature might impact the financing of the budget for that year. So your concerns are valid, but they're also contemplated by the order, and mitigation steps have been built into the framework to allow the impact on the budget to be identified, and for the minister to come up with a remediation plan for addressing any revenue shortfall that occurs as a result of lower revenue accretion to the national treasury. Mr. Olorunwaju asked if there was a risk of focus on the urban areas, but the president also alluded, for example, to the flour mills project at Agbara, which is also one of the approved roads under this scheme. Agbara, well, maybe when I was growing up, might have been considered an urban area, but in Nigeria of today, Agbara will probably be seen as more of a rural area. The road network there is completely abysmal, and you have a cluster of companies that actually operate in their flour mills, Unilever, Farmadeco, for those of you who remember Sunscreen soda. I don't know if they still produce Sunscreen soda, but they're all clustered around Sokoto Road in Agbara. And flour mills, of course, one company may not be able, like I said earlier, to have the balance sheet to finance this road. So flour mills is corralling a number of companies together and creating a collective investment scheme, an SPV, if you like, whereby they all co-finance this road and share in the cost of remedying the road and making it connected to the national grid. So no, and I think that's the last question I've got. Thank you very much.
You know, a 400 level student of University of Lagos, Afolabi Bello. Is he or she here? Can I have Afolabi Bello here? Are you the one coming up? Ajibola Odunjole, HMD2, Yaba College of Technology. Is he here? Okay, we're going to have Mr. Iguan of Construction Keza to please present this certificate of achievement to him quickly. Please. Is it cold? Alright, a round of applause for you once again, please. Very First position, please. First position, please. Please, a round of applause for Yaba College of Technology once again. Ifedako, Ososo. Ifedako, Ososo. Is he here? Oh, great. Great. Please, a round of applause for him. Have a picture with the president here before he leaves. Everything. I want to be like you when I grow older.
When he holds the mic, you will know that I always draw from his fountain of knowledge. He's a man of many parts that you will always like to. In fact, I call him the reporter's delight all the time, because we talk from many angles, and of course you cannot expect anything less from somebody who has been there at the top. Plaque is presented to QS Mutala Aliu, FNIQS, PPNIQS. They didn't put the title, it's Mutala Gumbi, and that should not be lost, because title, when you have traditional title like that, thank God it's not the embassy title. For his contribution is constant, at the 11th Annual Distinguished Lecture, theme, the challenges of social infrastructure development, effects of Executive Order 007-2019 on road development over key infrastructure, on 4th July 2019 at Museum Central, Nikon, Lagos. Mr. President, on behalf of the chairman and the Senate members of the Nigerian Surveyors, I hereby present the award to you, sir, for being a role model to us, for being a source of inspiration, and for somebody we always look up to. Thank you so much for coming.
Please a round of applause, please. Thank you. Presentation to Mr. Igwan of Construction Keza. And I would like to invite the chairperson of the Women Association of Quantity Surveyors of Nigeria, QS Adiruke Oyelami.
The NIQS Lagos chapter, that is Senate and members, in appreciation of your contribution as a discussant to this 11th Annual Distinguished Lecture, I hereby present this plaque to you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thomas. To help us with this will be our host, the chairman of Lagos State Chapter, QS Aliba Akiri. A round of applause, please.
Lagos Chapter, we present this to you as a token for your contribution to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. In the best for the last, please like to welcome the President, Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, who is ably represented here by QS Oba, QS Olaimishodubi, to please do the presentation to the keynote speaker. A round of applause to Mr. Ajibola Olomola.
And I want to believe I'll be speaking for everybody by saying that he did a wonderful job. Do you agree? On behalf of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors Lagos chapter, I hereby present this to you, Mr. Ajibola Olomola, for your contribution as a keynote speaker at the 11th Annual Distinguished Lecture of the chapter, with the theme, the challenges of social infrastructure development, effects of Executive Order 007 of 2019 on road development over key infrastructure on this day, 4th of July 2019, the day of independence, at the Motion Center, Nikon, Lagos.
Closing remarks.
For us to have a better understanding of the concepts which has been discussed, the paper as presented by the keynote speaker will be circulated to all of us via email. I will also advise that you can also download the Executive Order 077. Having had all the discussants, we have seen what to take home from here. The challenges have been noted, and the keynote speaker has rightly said that the points have been noted, so that they can also help us take it back. Now, the most important to us as quantity surveyors is what will be our roles and how do we benefit in this. Most of these have been highlighted, and I'm sure we'll benefit from that. Now, coming back to the program in itself, Distinguished Lecture Series, I will crave your indulgence to please help me recognize the initiator of the program. This program started 11 years ago by the then chairman of the chapter. He was Gideon. Please stand up. We thank all the successive chairmen who has kept the tempo going. And by God's grace, this will not be the last. Now, for us to be able to sustain this program thus far, it has always been through the support of our donors. As a professional body, we rely on sponsors greatly. And so I would like to use this opportunity to thank our donors who has helped us over the years to ensure that this program runs successfully. For those who have also pledged for this year's edition, we still look forward to your checks, and we believe that you will do so in due course. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming.
For giving us today, and I'd like to quickly send our gratitude, even though the representatives have left, the landlord in Lagos, Oba Riwa and Sholale Akiolu, the Oba of Lagos. I would also like to appreciate the President of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, QS Obafemi Onoshile, FNIQS, and the Zibu representative, QS Olayemi Shonubi, and all members of the National Executive Council that are here present. We must really thank all our discussants, as led by Mr. Jibola Olomola, as the President has said. That was a very, very insightful lecture, address, speech, whatever we want to call it today. Thank you very much. And even at a very short notice, thank you very much. QS Motala, you have left. He's always available whenever we call upon him. And it's also a very, very, very brilliant mind. QS Ajani Koko has left too. I can't remember any distinguished lecture series we've had that QS Ajani Koko has not been the chairman or a contributor. A big round of applause for him, please. Even though he has stepped out. Engineer Kaisovo, Iguan, in your capacity as a discussant, sponsor, and the CEO of one of the largest employer of quantity surveyors in Nigeria. We need to do more than that. The current secretary for Lagos State Ministry of Works and Infrastructure, represented by Engineer R.A. Thomas. Thank you very much for contributing to this. And our sponsors, I'm going to quickly read out their names. Sana Group, CAD PLC makers of Deluxe Paint, Austin Onaro and Associates, Construction Kesa, Artscape, Foresight Nigeria Limited, Ejik Lunene and Partners, BAM Associates, Coslick Associates, FOAB Partnership, HOS Consult, The Frank and Partners Limited, Adisoya and Partners, Consul Associates, Jabak Associates, and all intended and prospective sponsors. We are still expecting your checks. I know you are all seated there. We will be visiting your offices. And to all of us, your attendance has made this very, very worthwhile. To my colleagues in the Senate, who have worked day and night to make this very, very possible. Thank you all, ably led by Chairman QS Ayuba Akiri. And I hope that once again, when it's the 12th edition, we'll all gather here and even more than this. Thank you all very much once again.
Thank you, Dr. Chairman. Please, once again, a round of applause for yourselves. You've been wonderful. You've been wonderful, attentive, and we really appreciate your presence. So just a few things, closing remarks. First and foremost, I've been told to advise you that we have some bit of, as you walk out of this corridor, we're going to have a group photograph with everybody and everybody on the stage here just downstairs there for photograph. As well, there'll be something light that's going to be shared amongst us. I can assure you there's no crest involved in the refreshment you are going to be taking. So please try and be orderly. Once again, I thank all of us for being attentive. Myself and QS Shokoya have had a wonderful time today, and we hope to see you on the next one. Can we all rise for the national anthem as we close? QS Said Dosomo, the Publicity Relations Secretary, to give us closing prayer.
I'm interested in this.